a somewhat silly thought, but in hindsight, when I found out which men, whether in real life or actors on TV, that have had hair transplants, I feel like in hindsight, they all fall somewhere in the Norwood 2.5-ish range, maybe pushing more of a Norwood 3. That seems to be the category they fall in. But with that being said, I feel like I've never seen any man who had a hair transplant who was like Norwood 1 or like a juvenile hairline was like framed in, you know, like David Schwimmer. No one gets a hair transplant and says, make me look like David Schwimmer, you know. And I would assume that's because at that point it's already too late. By the time you realize, you know what, I think I need to go ahead and get a hair transplant, you've already matured enough with your hairline where it's too late to go that far back. But then also, I think we're coming to an understanding too that a juvenile hairline on a grown man can look sort of silly and unnatural to some degree. It's quite uncommon anyway, for the most part. But it is interesting that it seems with a hair transplant, what you're basically doing is you're sort of freezing things. You're rewinding things a little bit, but you're then freezing them right there. So it seems like, for example, Joe McHale has had a hair transplant, and I didn't know that. You know, someone brought it to my attention, and then I looked back on some old footage and saw clearly he was more like what, a Norwood 3 with diffuse thinning, and now he looks like, I don't know, I think his hairline looks a lot like mine, you know, Norwood 2. So it's like, you know, but I wouldn't have known that. But it's interesting. It's like that's kind of, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. What do you think? But doesn't it seem like men who have had hair transplants fall somewhere in the category of Norwood 2.5, maybe, well, maybe Norwood 3-ish almost, but that, I don't know, you tell me, men who have had hair transplants, what would you say their Norwood status seems to be? Definitely not Norwood 1, not juvenile, and in Norwood 4, what's the point? So basically, men who have hair transplants, what are we talking about? I mean, Matthew McConaughey, right? And Bradley Cooper. I mean, at worst, there are 2. So maybe the range is like 2 to 2.5. That's probably, even after you've had a hair transplant, that's what you're gonna end up having. I could be so wrong, and let's assume that I am. Tell me the truth in the comments. Men who have hair transplants, typically, if there was a reoccurring Norwood status after they've already had the hair transplant and they freeze time from there on, what is their Norwood gonna be for the most part? What would be the most reoccurring Norwood after getting the hair transplant? I've never thought about it until right now. Okay, let's keep this going right here in the comments.